All right, this is the Committee on Legislative Affairs and Elections. This is Thursday, September 21st, 2017. We're at 6 p.m. I have Council Hamlin. I have Council Napolitano. Here. I have Council McLaughlin.
Here.
I have Council Sani.
Here.
I have Council DePiero.
Here.
We have 5 members present. We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand with the audience. Please join us and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Council DePiero?
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules and take items 2 and 3 first, please.
Motion made and second. Take item 2 and 3. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Item number 2 first.
All right, item number 2. This is order up by Council Anthony DePiero as president to set the policy against fraudulent conduct.
To make a motion to invite the city auditor before us.
Second.
Motion made and second to invite city order. Mr. Dumas, would you please appear? Councilor DePiero?
I'm going to yield the floor to any questions my colleagues may have on the piece.
If I may, just before you start, I do apologize. I have an injury. I could not wear a shirt and tie today, nor actually shave, so no disrespect intended to the committee.
Me too.
Okay, Councilor DePiero first.
I yielded the floor, Mr. Chairman.
You yield, Councilor Sani? Councilor Sani?
Can, Mr. Demas, can you explain briefly this policy against fraudulent conduct, misappropriation, and corruption?
Absolutely. One of the things I've done since I've come here to the city is to use my past experience, fraud forensics, municipal consulting, as well as municipal auditing, to analyze the city's internal control structure mechanisms that are put in place to protect city assets. One of the most powerful and in my opinion, important policies that you can put in place is an anti-fraud and corruption policy. The purpose of the policy is to continually improve and strengthen the operations of the city. In general, what this policy says is that the mayor and city council have a zero tolerance when it comes to any type of inappropriate behavior. One of the things that this does that I think is very important is that not only does it send a clear message to all employees, elected officials, boards, commissions, it also impacts our vendors. So one of the things that I've been doing with our vendors is I've created, every time we create a new vendor here in the city, I put together a vendor policy checklist, and I provide vendors with applicable policies that I've implemented since I've been here, letting them know that we follow Chapter 30B, the procurement process, related parties, and the such. And I'm now going to be including, should the City Council adopt this, in with the city vendors as well. The other area where it becomes extremely important is that if we have city employees that through the normal course of their duties, providing services to the city, if they see something inappropriate or if they see a red flag, there currently is no mechanism in place or requirement that we placed upon the employees as to what they should do, whether it be a fellow coworker, whether it be a supervisor, a department head, or even a vendor. So what this does is it produces a map and allows them to know what expectations the city has as a condition of their employment, that everybody plays a part in protecting city assets. And then this gives them a mechanism so that they have the ability to make sure that if they have something that seems suspicious or inappropriate, they know what their expectations are and how to actually report it so that we can actually stop whatever potential activity is occurring sooner rather than later.
So at this time, we have nothing in place of a policy?
Nothing formal. The city for years has had a number of practices that the city has followed, but as you know, until you actually put a policy, a written document in place, it gets very difficult to try to enforce these types of undocumented practices. So one of the things that I've been trying to do is to go through, analyze what procedures, practices we have in place, and put together these documents to formally adopt them, to send a message to city employees, to elected officials, to vendors, so everybody knows what the expectations are. Should something occur, this also gives a mechanism as to how the city will address this. So should something happen and we are, I hope nothing happens, but should something happen and we have some type of employment action that we have to take as a result, we now have formal documented procedures as to how we would address that issue, so that we are protecting the employees' rights, we are protecting city officials' rights, and overall, and most importantly, we're protecting the assets of the city. And that is the purpose of me putting and drawing this together. It's part of the overall continual improvement that the mayor has tasked me with since I've been here. So I'm constantly looking at areas within the city where we can continually make that improvement, formalize and document a lot of the very good procedures we already have in place.
I do think this is a great policy that should be in place, and, you know, I thank you for putting this together. Thank you. No more.
Councilman Napolitano?
Thank you. No, I agree. You know, practices were great, but there's still some implied flexibility there that doesn't really meet every criteria. I think taking this out and creating a policy that gives us basically a roadmap and a direction of what what falls under that. I think it's great. One quick question, and I'm looking under reporting procedures, and it talks about administrators. Now again, we're in our job as a body here. We don't have supervisors. We have a council president. Would we be included in the? Shouldn't we be included in the definition of administrator? Or would we fall under like the mayor's?
I certainly would be open to it, but in my former career, when I did fraud and forensics, and I was writing these policies, I never included city council or boards of selectmen. And the reason why I did that is this is an executive function. Mm-hmm. However, as under charter, once this goes and hits the mayor's office, the mayor's desk, then the mayor has a responsibility, and then we would then bring that matter to city council. Reason being is a lot of times when we're forced to deal with these types of unfortunate situations, they're personnel matters. And so it's important that we maintain the integrity of the investigation in case there are any potential criminal or civil actions taken, at which time, at the conclusion of the investigation, is when we would be reporting that to city council. But this does fall underneath the executive function.
Okay, that's fine. That's why I was just looking for a little more of an explanation. Sure. On that. I'm not big on implied meanings when it's not in print, so that's fine. Right. I have no questions. I think it's a great move, and moves us and continues to move us in the direction the city's going in for progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McLaughlin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a couple of brief questions, and I'll be honest, I'm just looking at this for the first time, so I apologize. And here it states a lot of mayor's chief of staff, a designee of the chief of staff. Shouldn't there be the organizational assessment officer now, which is Dr. Easy? He should be placed here instead of chief of staff, right? Because that's his role in the city as of recent, correct? Instead of the chief of staff?
No, his current role, as it's designed, I don't know if you've had a chance to read his job description, while his role is extremely valuable in helping us increase efficiencies and effectiveness and making sure that we're utilizing all of city assets, specifically our employee resources, to the best potential function that we can. This really falls underneath, outside of the purview of that job description. and this is more of an investigative function. However, one of the things that I did include in this policy is or the chief of staff's designee. So should we run into a situation where it would be important or prudent to include the director of organizational assessment and could be valuable in this, the chief of staff, Mr. O'Donnell, would have the ability to appoint him as the designee. So it does give us that option should we feel that that is the best course of action moving forward.
Ms. Stevens, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the first things that the organizational assessment director did was send out an email to all employees asking for a resume. So does this not fall under the same sort of guidelines of keeping track of employees in our city? I'm a little confused by how that's a different responsibility.
Well, the responsibility that Dr. Easy has in his role as the Director of Organizational Assessment is taking a look at and analyzing resources and making sure that each employee, we are getting the most out of each employee, that they know what their expectations are from a job duty standpoint, making sure
But
that
if he's
job
doing that,
descriptions-
shouldn't he be?
But job descriptions are up to date and that sort of thing.
Yep.
What this policy is specifically dealing with is inappropriate conduct. We're talking about people doing things with intent, which is outside the normal course of their job duties. Dr. Easy is working on the normal course of their job duties. However, this is a situation in which somebody has potentially done something inappropriate that would never fall underneath an employee's job description. But again, because of the language that's written in there, and the chief of staff has the ability to designate somebody to act on his behalf, certainly Dr. Easy, I would think, would be probably one of our strongest candidates for that designee. But again, this is a policy against fraudulent conduct, misappropriation, and corruption, which is outside the scope of the current job description for the Director of Organizational Assessment. You and I had a brief conversation about that on Thursday. I don't know if you've had a chance to read what his job description is, but if you haven't, I strongly encourage you to take a look at it and read
I
through
have, and that's why I'll accept your answer, but I'm not pleased with it, to be very truthful. I think if Dr. Easy is doing an assessment of each employee in the city currently, he should also be implementing this as A, they're doing a great job, or B, there may be a conflict or maybe an issue down the road, or whatever the case might be. It's A or B. But it all falls under the same category, which is assessment of an employee in the city.
I think Dr. Easy is an extremely valuable member to the mayor's senior staff, and I think he's going to play a very critical role in many aspects. Respectfully, what I think, though, I think if you actually get the chance, and I'd be happy to provide it to you, if you actually take the time and read what his job description is, I think that it'll become more clear to you as to how the two are actually, as of right now, separate components. But I'd be more than happy to walk through Dr. Easy's job description.
I would appreciate that, because I guess I don't clearly understand what Dr. Easy's role or duties are here in City Hall. Then if this isn't part of what he should be implementing or overseeing, then I would like to talk about
I would
that
be more than happy
with
to
you.
go through the job description for that position. But again, that job description in simple terms is dealing with normal course of duties, normal activities
Well, this is still
that an
normal.
employee would
This
do.
is still normal.
No, this is
It
actually
is
not.
because somebody just did something wrong. It's still an employee in our city. They may have just done something that wasn't a normal course of action, but it's still an employee in our city that we're responsible for, and it's still their day-to-day job.
Agreed, but the difference is, this is a policy against fraudulent conduct, misappropriation, and corruption. This is an intent to do something that is most likely illegal. You're not going to have somebody's normal course of duties having them to do something illegal. And
Okay.
that's not what Dr. Easy is looking at. Dr. Easy is taking a look at what their duties are, whether or not we need to expand roles, we need to expand positions. It's supposed to be for how they can best serve.
I just think if
employees, best serve
he's
the city.
dealing so closely with employees that Mr. O'Donnell has a lot of other things on his plate. He has a full load. If Dr. Easy is directly communicating and working with employees in our city, then this should be Dr. Easy's role, not the chief of staff, who has a lot of other responsibilities, they're kind of overlapping at that point.
From a
to point.
hierarchy standpoint, it goes the mayor and then the chief of staff. And so
We're not
in my,
old,
in
we're
my
not old, we're
professional
not old
opinion-
English,
What's that?
but never mind, never
In
mind.
my professional opinion, it falls underneath the chief of staff, who oversees all personnel throughout the city. And so just by the very
So
nature
then,
of
so
his
then,
position.
if that's the case, then, okay, I'm not gonna have this argument with you tonight, but if that's the case, then I question the organizational assessments.
Again, I'd be more than happy
That's
to
fine.
review the Director of Organizational Assessments job description, and I'm sure Dr. Easy would be more than happy to sit with you
Okay,
and to
that's fine,
review
and
the job description.
and we can do that. The second part is, how does elected officials fall under where does elected officials, because we don't answer to the administration, and we're not accountable to Dr. Easy or chief, or the mayor or anybody else, we're accountable to the residents. So if something were to come up with somebody in these chambers, where does that go from there, under this new policy? Because we govern our own self with
I completely
with the
agree.
city charter. So where does that item go?
I completely agree. However, being an elected official does not allow, elected officials are not allowed to do inappropriate actions.
Well,
So,
of
for
course.
example, if an employee, and I'll just use a hypothetical, if an employee of the city, or if a vendor of the city,
Yep.
or if somebody having a matter before the board has an issue and feels that something inappropriate has been done with a city council member, rightly or wrongly, then what they would do is they would be reporting that to the chief of staff so that we would have a mechanism in place so that we could investigate that. Elected officials should be held just as accountable, if
But
not
not to the
more.
administration, though, for
But-
sure.
But not to the administration. However, the mayor and the executive function.
Is
if
a
he-
separate entity
They-
versus the legislative branch.
They are a separate branch. However, it is incumbent upon the executive branch, should an accusation be made, whether it be investigated internally or whether it gets turned over to either law enforcement or to legal counsel, you can't just allow an allegation sit
So
on
then,
deaf
so then the
ears.
mayor, at that point, then has the ability to have a witch hunt against an elected official. Absolutely. Then we're opening the floodgates for the mayor to have a witch hunt against an elected official in these chambers.
I really think, with all due respect,
You
if
can
you're
really-
using the terms witch hunt, I think you're really missing the point. The whole point of this policy
I'm
is
not,
to
Mr.
help
Demas.
protect the city.
It's,
Gentlemen, if I could interrupt.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman, sure.
If you look at the next item on the calendar,
yep,
the next item on the calendar is to.
yep. And that's where I was going with this,
but
exactly,
that's-
Mr. Chair.
That's almost.
And that's why
exactly what
we
the
shouldn't
other one
be,
is
that's why
doing,
the
so-
legislative body shouldn't be included in this. Because well, they are, he just said,
So we'll be
in
doing
this,
our own.
in this policy should not be. We're creating a legislative code for ourselves, to be governed and to be responsible under a legislative code, just like the administrative code.
It'll probably be an exact, well, very close to what we're listening to right now.
So I just want to make sure that right, and exactly what you just said, and the employees that work for the city council are not being asked to be accountable to the administration. There's 4 individuals
They
that,
do work for us anyway.
that work for us and not for the administration.
Okay, so, no, are you also, okay. All right, thank you. Councilman Napolitano.
Thank you. All right, I get a sense a little bit of, I think, where the confusion on this is. First of all, even though we're elected officials, we are just as liable and responsible under this policy as any other employee of the city. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay, so even if one of our members is caught conducting inappropriate or, corruption, they're just as liable for prosecution as any other employee in the city.
That is correct.
Okay. I think the concerns might be in realms that we have an ethics committee, and that maybe something ties this in to this, so there is some involvement by city council. It's only, again, it would only apply if it applies to our own members, okay? And of course, the administration is going to do what it needs to do if one of our members is caught doing something wrong. This is basically, you're trying to create if I'm understanding correctly, you're trying to raise the bar and create a standard that's across the board for everybody who's classified as a city employee.
Yes, and to address what we view as a city is what our culture should be, that there is a zero tolerance for inappropriate behavior. For example, as the CFO and as the city auditor, under Mass General Law, I process all of the bills related to city council expenses. I have a fiduciary responsibility, if I see something being submitted that I determine to be fraudulent or potentially fraudulent, I have under law the requirement to ensure that nothing inappropriate is going on. Regardless of what you pass with your ethics committee, that fiduciary responsibility under Mass General Law is placed on me. I can't just simply look the other way. Not that I think it would happen, but I can't just look the other way and say, this seems inappropriate, but it's city council, so I'm just going to sign off on it. That's not going to happen.
And you shouldn't.
I still have the floor if I could.
And so that's the purpose of just saying that this policy applies to every individual related in the course of business through the city. And it should apply to everyone. And we should all be treated equally, including myself, which is why there's a mechanism in place here as well that, say somebody sees me doing something inappropriately, I am now excluded from the reporting process, and that would go directly to the chief of staff or the city solicitor or to the police chief or somebody else. This policy is showing a culture of how the city wants to conduct their business, and that nobody is above the law and everybody will be treated equally. And that is the only purpose of this, which is the only reason why I took this, I took it a little rough when you use the term witch hunt, because I see this as nothing but positive for the city and another way for us to, as the mayor's given me the direction, to continually improve and strengthen the controls over city assets. The city is growing rapidly. There's a lot of activity that's going on, and the more procedures and the more internal controls and mechanisms that we can put in place to protect the city, I only see that as a positive. There's a very good working relationship between the mayor's office, city council, with the school department. Everybody is getting along. We have an environment right now where we can significantly lock down and improve the city in a number of ways. And that's where I see my focus. And that's one of the reasons why I take the time to analyze the areas that I can make that contribution, that continual improvement. And I see it as we're all in this together. It's not us versus them. We're all in this together, which is why I thought it was very clear, very important to put in the first paragraph and underneath the policy statement that we're all in this together and we all take this very seriously.
Just a
And
point, as you said, that you're in charge of anything that might be fraudulent, come to the audit, that's as it has always been.
Precisely.
I know it was before I even came into city council, which was quite a few years ago, that the auditor had the job. If she saw something that the council did that was wrong, she'd bring it right, it was a female at the time, she'd bring it right up, you know, and so that, it always existed. That's not something we should think that's new going on. That's always been the way.
Exactly, and it's actually prescribed by Mass General
Right.
Law. Mass General Law puts that fiduciary responsibility on me. All I'm doing is documenting it. This
okay.
isn't me to go after and look at anything. Mass General Law specifically says, I have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that every time I'm signing off on something, that the goods and services were rendered, proper procedures were followed, and that everything has been done in accordance with the law. If I don't see documentation to support that, then it would be illegal for me to sign off on a warrant. And right now, we've had these great policies in place, but they've been informal. All I'm trying to do is formalize them to show that we are fully compliant with the law. And God forbid, as your CFO, I make the majority of the recommendations and I process all of the financial transactions. Right now, if somebody in my office sees something, they have no mechanism in place to know what's going to happen. You know, who do I go to? What this does is this gives a tool to the employees so that they now know what they can do. They now know what their options and what their expectations are. So whether it's me, whether it's in my office, whether it's in DPW, whether it's in the recreation department, this is a tool for the employees to know that if they see something, they need to say something, and this is how you do it to protect yourself so that there won't be any ramifications. Because I've seen it in many fraud investigations in the past where lower level employees were aware of higher manager level employees conducting and doing things inappropriate, but they didn't have a mechanism and they weren't comfortable and didn't know how to report that. And so these types of situations prolonged much longer than they needed to do. My goal is we're never going to create a policy that is going to make 100% certainty that nothing inappropriate is going to happen. You can't do that because then you're not going to function. What we can do, though, is we can put policies in place, mechanisms in place, so that we can identify them sooner rather than later, nip it in the bud and keep it small before it blows up into something larger. And that is really the entire purpose of this document.
And I just want to add one bit of clarification, only because rumor mill, people read, they see this meeting, they have different interpretations of what they believe were being said. This applies equally from the mayor down to the lowest paid custodian, right?
It does.
And that also implies, there's also a vehicle in here that addresses any corruption by anybody from the mayor down to the lowest form of custodian.
It
Is that correct?
absolutely includes the mayor as well.
Right, and I wanted to make sure that that was on record, because there will be people who are going to approach me this weekend and say, well, you know, the mayor's just trying to put it so you can get in where you want, and he's immune. Well, he's not immune, because this applies to him as well.
It absolutely does. And in addition to that, it places responsibilities on me. Should I learn of something, I now have spelled out responsibilities as to how I need to incorporate myself. And if that means we take it to either to the city solicitor, or we take it to an outside agency, whether it's a federal agency, a state agency, whether we have to take it to the council. This just specifies that if something happens, nobody is immune, nobody is above the law. This is our policy, this is our culture. Our primary purpose is to protect the city and all of their assets, and that everybody has a role in providing and protecting providing that protection, all the way down from, you know, the lowest level clerk all the way up to the mayor acting as the CEO, the CFO, the chief of staff is included in this, the city solicitor, city council, board members, and I'm going to be presenting this to vendors as well, so that they know what our culture is and what we're trying to do, that everything that we're going to do is above board and fully compliant with Mass General Law. And that's all we're trying to do here. And this is a mechanism that allows us to do that.
All right, Councilor McLaughlin, please.
So Demas, again, it raises a concern to me when an email goes out to employees that work for the city council. So I'm trying to figure out if one of those individuals that don't account to the mayor and the administration, it's the responsibility of the council president. Where in here does that, so what happens to that individual? They're not being chastised by the administration because they don't account to the administration. They account to the city council president. So what happens in that instance?
In a situation like that,
It-
without
it-
knowing.
it doesn't
without
spell it
knowing
out
any-
here, it makes it
Without
concern.
knowing any specific details
Yep.
and something like that, if it was a member of city council, then what, then
Or an
what would-
employee of.
or an employee of, because at the end of the day, you have to realize, I understand we're three separate branches, you know, two separate branches of government, but at the end of the day, we are all, under Mass General Law, city employees. So if there was something that involved a city councilor, we would go through the proper procedures to make sure that we're doing everything by the book. And if it rose to the level that something was inappropriate, then the council president would become involved. If it's not the council president, then we would have to, with legal counsel, make the determination as to how best to proceed and what the notification process would be.
But do you not think that somewhere in here should spell out that you would report it to the Ethics Commission of the City Council? That's why we have an Ethics Commission on the City Council, to handle conduct of members and employees of. In here, it does not spell that out anywhere. It
What if-
doesn't
what
give,
if
it
it's
doesn't give
members of-
light to our Ethics Commission.
Well, again, this is a roadmap as to how best to deal with it. You
And I
can't-
understand
If you want me
it's-
to incorporate every single potential
No, I
hypothetical-
want you to incorporate that
But
the
what if
City
it's a
Council
me-
has an Ethics Commission, and you guys are trying to supersede that at this point.
I'm not trying to supersede anything. What happens if it's a member of the Ethics Commission? I'm not going to report it to the Ethics Commission.
That member gets excluded from that committee at that point. That's why there's 4 members to a committee. That's why there's 4 members to a committee. If there's one individual on there, it gets excluded from that committee meeting. Absolutely.
Typically, everything would go through the council president, and then the council president would deem as policy.
I'll be honest, to be able to vote for this, I need to see that our Ethics Commission laid out somewhere in here. You guys need to respect the fact that we have an Ethics Commission. That's why our committee is created. That's why we've created committees in the City Council. That's why we have boards and committees, for certain responsibilities of the City Council, and that's one of them. that it doesn't sit well with me, Mr. Demus. I'll be truthful with you. Because,
fine, but as
because
long as you keep
our
it separate from
organizational
the other-
our organizational officer came in, and again, I'll allude to that, sent out an email to the members that work for the city council asking for resumes and job descriptions. They don't report to the administration. So that
With
concerns
all due
me.
respect, I think you're upset with that email, and you're confusing that case with this case, which are two separate issues.
Okay.
And again,
My-
I'm more
my-
than
I'm going to
happy
yield the
go through-
floor, and I'm going to allow my colleagues to do what they so wish, but at this point, I really find it hard to be able to vote for this.
Council DePiero.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to refer this to our September 25th meeting with a favorable recommendation.
Motion made second for favorable. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Clerk will please call the roll.
All right, Council Hinkle.
Yes. Yes.
Council Napolitano. Yes. Council McLaughlin.
Yes.
Council Stein.
Yes.
And Council DePiero.
Yes.
We have 5 yeas, 0 nays.
5 yeas, 0 nays. I'm sorry I didn't let you go before we took the vote, but you are excused. Thank you
Oh,
very much.
thank you.
And motion is passed. Clerk will please read the next item on the calendar,
Have a good evening.
on the agenda.
Item number 3, this order up by Council Michael McLaughlin and Council John Hanlon to create a legislative code for city council.
Councilor McLaughlin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think the appropriate motion on this piece is to send it to a work committee, a work session
Of this committee.
of this committee. So can I ask the city clerk to come before us for 1 second, please?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to have the city clerk before us. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. Clerk will please appear.
Good evening, councilors. Sergio Canelio, City Clerk.
So, Mr. Clerk, I apologize. I have not done this before. So we're sending this to a work committee of this committee?
Correct. We've done this in the past. We did it with the taxi ordinance not that long ago. Councilor Napolitano, you were there.
I worked on it, but I
was-
forgot
yep.
how it got there.
It was a few months ago. So through your committee, you can do what is called a work session. It's a piece off of the committee where either the chairman and the clerk of committee or either or can assign a date. We do have to post it legally, just like any other meeting. And what we do is we go into that session, and that's where we really get into the nitty-gritty of the law or the ordinance or the motion or whatever it is. So in a committee, committees are more in-depth, but a work session is even more in-depth. It's really where everything should really begin, especially large ordinances like this. So this is an order more. It's going to tie off with our city council rules. It is strictly going to govern, just so you know, I'm just giving you a little brief explanation of what it is. It's going to govern the 4 employees of the city council. It is going to explain processes, job descriptions, what my job description, assistant city clerk, clerk of committee, and the office manager legislative aid position, what they do, how we're appointed. Some of it is by charter anyway, but some isn't. So we need to define those things. We need to define what the council, and it's going to tie in a little bit with what you discussed there, not with the fraud part of it, but it's going to tie into the whole overall organizational assessment of the city. So what the mayor's doing with the organizational assessment department, we're going to tie into that a little bit. I had a great meeting with Dr. Easy about, even though I don't work for him, he's really been very helpful with explaining some of the things that he's doing, and I'd like to tie in a little bit with that, separate from them, but utilize his experience and the experiences of the administration. I think it's overall a great thing. It's going to be great for me as a manager. So I hope that's okay with the counselors, but it's something that I look forward to doing. And it's going to tie in with that, and that's where we're going to write it in the legislative code. It will strictly be our code. You'll be fully in charge of it. Similar to the mayor, the only difference is the mayor can't put orders and ordinances through, so it always funnels through us. It leads with him. This one will strictly be through the city council.
So do we just make a motion to lay this on the table for 60 days?
So no,
No. So I'm going to yield the floor to Count. What do we?
correct. Correct, yes.
Councilor Napolitano.
Yes. Again, just for clarification of the public, the reason we do a work group like this is so we can focus on one topic, not distracted by other items on the agenda. You know, we could be at a meeting with several agenda items and be here for an hour and a half and only be able to get minimal amount of work done. Something like this, to this magnitude, we need to be able to sit down, roll our sleeves up, and be able to actually draft not only language, but potential scenarios, get a better idea. This is how we were able to rebuild the taxi cab ordinance. We had a basic structure, and everybody brought some pieces to the table, and we were able to hammer it out. This would be the same purpose for that. And I think it's a great idea. You know, the thing is that, you know, we're still going through growing pains. You know, the new city charter has only been in force, this is coming up now on, the fifth, sixth year. So the thing is that some things have been changed to accommodate the charter changes. Other things like in our own camp still refer to things that are unique to the bicameral structure. So this is a great idea. It's overdue. Again, it's just part of, in my opinion, it's part of the regular course of business that'll help us to be able to fine-tune our performance and what is expected of each and every one of us. So I'm going to motion that we refer this
Well,
to...
Before you do that, any further questions of the city clerk? You are excused. Thank you very much for coming up.
So I'd
Motion,
like to
please.
make a motion to refer this to a work group of the members of this committee.
Second
To
motion.
be scheduled by the clerk of committees, so we can sit down and
Motion
hammer
made,
this out.
okay.
And I also would also like to invite the city clerk
Okay,
to
motion
attend
made
that
and
meeting
seconded
with us
to
as
refer
well.
this to a work committee of this committee. Motion made and second. Any further discussion?
They didn't bring it.
Hearing none.
They're not
All in
even
favor?
here. Aye.
All opposed, so moved. The ayes have it. We now instruct our clerk to go back to the regular order of business, which is item number one.
Item number 1, this is order up by Council Anthony DePiero as president to fill the vacant position of assistant city clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to motion that we adjourn to executive session, and then one by one, invite each applicant to come up to be interviewed by members of the committee in the privacy of our space in the
Second.
back.
Second.
I'd also like to invite the city clerk, who is the department head of the position that we're looking to fill, and of course, our clerk of committees.
And before we do that, I'd just like to explain to the public that's present, the reason we're going into executive session is because it's something that we want to be able to apply ourselves by having a private meeting with every candidate that's here. And that's why we go into executive session. And at the same time, I would like to ask that, I don't know the order of calling you in, but would you please stay afterwards, because this is going to come to Monday night's meeting, and we will not have time to send you a letter saying whether you are going to be thought of or not thought of, you know, so we would like you to stay after you have your interview with the committee, okay? Okay, so, motion made and seconded to refer to executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are now in executive session. I can leave everything here. I'll take this here with me. What? We did it. Just waiting for our clerk. No. Okay, here it is. Okay. All set, John? Oh, you got to plug it in, go ahead. On? Okay. Meeting will come to order. To our guests in the audience, we'd like to thank you all for appearing. Actually, we have enjoyed your presentations. We thought they were very good. We all talked about you and how much we liked each one of you, and it was very difficult, and we have decided that we're only going to make one recommendation to come to the council meeting on Monday night, rather than have two or three and whatever, but we only want to have one recommendation. But I also want to point out that if you would like to come to the meeting on Monday night, doesn't mean that someone else can't recommend you. And it doesn't also mean that someone can recommend someone that hasn't even been here. You know, the interviews are for us. If we missed one person, didn't show up, if she wanted to come in and have her name put up, you know, as any one of you would like to do, but we do have one recommendation, and I just want you to know we're all very pleased that you all came, okay? So our recommendation is for David Rigucci to be our assistant clerk, but that still has to be approved on Monday night, this coming Monday night, by the full 11 members board of councilors in the city of Everett. So thank you all. Appreciate it very much that you have been here. If there's anything we can do for you in the future, as a matter of fact, we're keeping all of the resumes on file, because we know of places where jobs are opening up, and we might do that. We've done that once already with the last group. So thank you all so very much. Appreciate it. Keep in touch, okay?
I'll make a motion to
To
adjourn.
Second.
Motion made, and
Second.
second to adjourn. All in favor of adjourn?
Aye.
We are adjourned.